Well, you've likely seen the headlines this week: historic learning setbacks for United States students because of the coronavirus pandemic. And there was no question, as soon as schools were shut down in the early stages of the pandemic, and then the prolonged with remote hybrid classes, learning progress, well, it really took a hit. But historic setbacks may have hit a little hard. The nation's report card is in, and the first results since 2019, pre-pandemic, are now available. So it's pretty clear. We're going to go back to the story of the nation's report card and the historic hit to learning that students have suffered across the country because of COVID. And this is when a big portion of the several school years were either online or hybrid or something in between. So where do we stand? Well, this is one of the metrics, the NAEP as they call it. How is Idaho public education doing as we move out of the COVID pandemic? Big picture-wise, there are new insights on math and reading levels for Idaho 4th and 8th graders as a part of the nation's report card.
It's the same test all the way across the board, and so it's a really good metric so that we can compare state to state to state and also the national average.
Paul Kleinert is Idaho's coordinator for the National Assessment for Education Progress. This go-around, NAEP as it's called, tested 4th and 8th graders on math and reading ability across the country and here in Idaho. The dataset creates an easy tool to compare and contrast all 50 states.
They're being tested on a set of standards put together by the National Assessment Governing Board. And so they're not Idaho standards and they're not standards for any other state, so that it's equal all the way across the board.
The last time the assessment was given was in 2019. So a major takeaway since then.
The metrics show us that something happened between 2019 and 2022, and I think everybody's well aware of that.
Oh yes, that pandemic. Well, learning loss has been a major concern. So what did the NAEP big picture results tell us about that topic?
It was down across the board for the United States and for Idaho. What's interesting is that it was down in different areas. For 4th grade, it was down a little bit more in Idaho, and for 8th grade, it was down a little bit more everywhere else.
The NAEP assessment is scored between 0 and 500 on math and reading. And again, 2 grades are tested, 4th and 8th grade, on both topics, math and reading. So let's talk about 4th graders first. In reading, Idaho scored 215 with the national average at 216 for 4th graders. And looking back, the score is lower than 2019 results, where 4th graders were scoring 223 in reading. In 4th grade math, Idaho scored 236, with the national average just below it at 235. If you look back to 2019, Idaho is down from a score of 242 in 19. On to the 8th grade side, Idaho students scored 264 in reading, with the national average at 259. Idaho 8th graders dropped from the 2019 score of 266. In the math assessment, Idaho 8th graders scored 282, with the national average at 273. Idaho 8th graders did drop from 2019 results on an average score of 286. Now, the data was just published this week, so there's a lot to dig into, but here are some early takeaways.
The interesting stories are in 8th grade. They went down less in Idaho than they did in the rest of the nation. And that paints a really good picture about what was happening in the state, what were teachers doing, how were students learning. And because of teachers doing such a great job, 8th graders floated to the top of the curve compared to the rest of the states. There are no states that did better than Idaho significantly in math grade 8. The 8th grade did fantastic. Reading, there were only 2 states that did better than Idaho, and in math, 0 states did better than Idaho.
And at the 4th grade level,
we noticed that in 4th grade math, girls didn't do as well as boys when we dug into the data, and that's something that could be looked at in the future. It seems to be, in general, that girls could be social learners, and because they weren't in person, they weren't working with each other, their peers and their teachers, as much as they were before, that could be what happened, possibly.
Bottom line, there is expected learning loss, but Idaho schools appear to have stayed fairly consistent compared to some other states. A major factor, Idaho educators.
Know that your teachers did such an excellent job. They stuck to it. They were in the classroom. And they were promoting learning the entire time. Students came to school, they learned, and wherever they were, however they learned, remember that teachers did great.
Tuesday night, we heard from candidates for the race for Idaho's Superintendent of Public Instruction. And so here's what they had to say about their plan to address learning loss. We'll hear from Debbie Critchfield and Mr. Terry Gilbert.
Back to basics, focusing on literacy and how we make sure that our kids know how to read. There's been significant monies put towards that, but we're still not seeing the outcomes that we hope to have. Focusing on professional development and ensuring that we have valuable training for our teachers that translate into effective strategies in the classroom.
We can call upon our retired teachers to come back into the schools, work with our students, and we can ask compassionate adults in the community also to come into the schools to work. I don't think the burden should fall only on our teachers. They're overburdened now. They are overworked now. So that is my plan, to bring other people into the school setting.
So that was the debate from Tuesday night this week. The superintendent of public instruction here in Idaho, Terry Gilbert, Debbie Critchfield. They got into a lot of topics, and the full debate and a recap is available right now at ktvb.com. Before we go to break, though, I know one of you made a comment about how many students took NAEP, and I can tell you NAEP tested about 3,500 students statewide from 170 different schools, again, 4th and 8th graders. So this was a pretty comprehensive look around the state, but not every single student in the state did take that NAEP exam. All right, 2:08 rolls on here on your Friday. We're going to step aside, but we'll be back right after this.